Hello adventurers and welcome to another Demon Hunter PvP video. It has been a few months since my last video. I took a break from the game and I recently came back. There's also new essences, so there's a lot to cover on what the current Demon Hunter meta is. I'll be covering two builds, one that really only works for very high res whale Demon Hunters, and then the second one that works for pretty much every Demon Hunter. So let's get into it. The first build that I'll discuss is the one that works for pretty much any Demon Hunter, and there are a few different variations of this build. The set pieces are 4-piece Urge, 4-piece Gloom, and the reason you run Gloom is for the damage increase when you dash. You run Urge to increase your attack speed and beneficial effect duration. Your gear pieces are Best Discretion, Duplicitous Prophetics, Escalating Violence, Secret Safeguard, Turmoil, Hellbinder, Unrelenting Fur, and painsower. There are a few different variations in the painsower build, but for all intensive purposes, just call the painsower build what we're using right now with the pieces. You can sub out knockback shot if you want to run impale. You can sub out explosive arrow for crossbow shot. There's a lot of variations. This one is the one I run into most. I think the one with explosive arrow and knockback shot works the best because it procs firestorm. It does the most damage. However, I do see variations with impale and multi-shot as well. And generally all you do is you just press knockback shot, vengeance, and then you fake around using painsower. And the difference with painsower and the build that I'll show in a little bit is one fires primary attack and then the other one does not. And skills wise, like I said, knockback shot, escape, strafe, vengeance, and explosive arrow. But again, it all depends on the pieces that you really want to run. If you want to run crossbow shot, you can drop maybe knockback shot for impale or multi-shot. If you decide not to run explosive arrow because you have a better crossbow shot charm, then you can move some pieces around to see what does more damage for you. But painsower build is painsower build. It's just a couple different variations within. For paragon tree, there are two choices, maybe three choices, all depending on your playstyle and how aggressive you want to be and kind of how you want to play the class. My personal preference is to run brawler with heavy armor, rugged, combat expertise, defender, sanctuary, finishing touch. Those are the choices that I like to run. Gladiator is also a very solid choice. You can run cheat death, quick-witted, uncontrollable, grizzled veteran, and this is a vault build that I was running. So instead of first aid, you may want to run to the victor if you're getting a lot of kills. This one will help you with your defense and offense at the same time. And then the other one could be Harbinger if you want to kind of run with a dash build. Maybe you would like to run Blur, Ambush, Shackle, Fate, Quick Step, and maybe one other skill. You could run that if you'd like. Not a whole lot of people run this paragon tree, but I could see this one being useful as well, depending on your playstyle. Reforges, there are two different reforges depending on the build that you want to play. You could run a very offensive reforge or you could run a very defensive reforge. I personally run a very defensive reforge, but if you're keen on being a glass cannon, maybe you want to run Vengeance Family Stone with some block chance, and you could either run knockback resist or damage reduced from players, one of those in the top skill. But you could run 8 of those, or you can run a more defensive build, running Barrier Stone, and then also damage taken from players reduced. It's very, very much your choice and how you play and how if you're dying, if you're not. But because we get 2 reforge slots, I personally just run 2 different ones. One that's very attack heavy and one that's very defensive heavy. Attack one is good for if I just want to be a glass cannon or go for more damage or doing like PvE content. And of course, defensive gives me a lot of shields and survivability when I'm doing PvP. Your choice, but because of the reforged slots that we have today, you could technically do both and then change between them depending on how the matches are going. Okay, and the second build is very, very much a whale focused or whale heavy build. This build runs 4-piece Mount Bank and 4-piece Gloom. The difference with this, a lot of the pieces are the same, like Best Discretion, Escalating Violence, Secret Safeguard, Turmoil, Unrelenting Fur. The difference is Electrum Luna for the offhand, sjikar for the offhand, and Redella's light braid for the chest. Now here's the question I get asked all the time. Why does this build work? This build works because Strafe now randomly fires piercing shots at nearby enemies, dealing 23,000 damage. And then of course the main hand and the chest and everything else buffs that kind of damage, as well as your charm. So all this damage gets buffed, and this is per shot. And because it fires 4 piercing shots at an enemy or random enemies, it does 23,000 per shot minimum. 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 1 2 3 4. All right, so those piercing shots between 3 and 4, each one of those will do 23,000 damage, and they can all hit the same target, and then that's where your damage comes from. So you kind of use windwheel blade, you hold them in place, you dash, and then you hit them as hard as you can or as fast as you can, and then you kind of get out. So between your dashes, your windwheel blade, you can swing on top of them, hit them, throw your spinning chakram again, dash around them, throw it like this, do that again. That's kind of how it plays. So here we are at the training dummy, and I want to explain what I mean by each piercing shot. So as you saw right there, I fired Strafe and let go, and it didn't just do 23,000 damage. You can see how 4 fire and hit the same target. So with 1 strafe motion, you fire 4 of the piercing beams at the same target and can do 107k damage. This, of course, gets buffed by the chest piece by doing more damage the longer that you channel. This gets buffed by all your gems, which I currently have nothing in because I just wanted to showcase what it looked like. But gloom buffs the damage, everything buffs that damage. So you can imagine what you do in PvP. You kind of just dash and then you hold, and then you can do a lot of damage, especially if all the piercing shots hit the same target. Obviously it does less damage than the painsower variant because you're not firing your primary attack, but the nice thing about this build is the distance and the speed. These piercing beams pretty much instantly make it to the target, whereas the painsower build, sometimes your target will move and you will fail to hit the target at a distance about this distance right here. So, and you'll see in the clips how I can be at max distance pretty much off screen and be hitting the target with this build. And for this build, paragon tree wise, I run brawler. I like this one a lot with finishing touch for some of the extra bursts that I need. Since I'm not running painsower, I really rely on this finishing touch tree here, or this talent, to increase some damage. Reforge wise, I'm running all defensive reforges, which is barrier in each slot. The 2% chance for a shield is really, really good, especially for a demon hunter, because our survivability is pretty poor. That's also why I run secret safeguard. It's why I run Mount Bank and Brawler. It's just because of the extra chances for shields and being able to survive. Because if a Tempest gets on you or a Blood Knight or anything gets on you, you're pretty much dead. You'll see in the clips kind of how the shields work and how they can help you survive, be able to chase kills, push the lane with spinning chakram. So that's the reforges. But keys, what about the new essences? Well, unfortunately, the new essences are very underperforming in PvP. And if we look at the new ones, the helm is primary attack speed for every bleeding enemy. Could be useful. Not that useful in PvP unless they're all grouped up, because you need to get it on 3 people. So it's very unlikely that your bleed is going to last that long, especially in high resonance games, because everyone has a lot of like resistances. You need a lot of potency to make your bleeds work. Same thing with the spinning chakram. You lose escalating violence just to get the explosion on spinning chakram. Taking a look at the chest, Vengeance now causes primary attack to inflict bleed and shatter enemy armor. This could be possible with the painsower build. You could run this chest instead of the Strafe crit chest or Rodella's life braid, depending on which one you want to run. The pants spinning chakram also increases your primary attack speed. This is not very useful because the primary attack doesn't affect the strafe. Only attack speed will make your strafe proc faster. Crossbow shot splits into 2 projectiles when it hits a bleeding enemy. This is kind of weird for PvP. You'd have to give up a main hand that's pretty essential to making painsower work. I just personally don't think that this is very useful in PvP. And then Lion Jaw, obviously this is the one that empowers your attacks for, you know, a couple seconds and allows you to launch chakrams at the speed of your primary attack. If I were to run a build, it'd be kind of something like this. Best discretion, Flayer's Banquet, Escalating Violence, Slayer's Breaches, Unrelenting Fur, Lion Jaw, Fang Spitter, and Painsower. Unfortunately, the offhand has an issue. Yes, it does empower your primary attack. So the faster your primary attack fires, the more chakrams you throw. It works really nice with Strafe and the Painsower build. The issue that you run into is you have to be in melee range to get the chakram to bounce. So if you see, I have to be right here in order for it to bounce. And when you're this close to a target, especially a Tempest or a Blood Knight or a Necro, anything with like AoE damage, you're just too close. So unfortunately, when I tested this build and I tried a variation upon variation with different set pieces, running more defensive, running more offensive, I just could not make this build work reliably. It looks cool. I think if it worked like the Tempest blades, where 3 or 4 surround you and they automatically fire without having to spin around and put yourself this close. Like if you could be this distance and still work, maybe you could make that work because you could painsower like this. But unfortunately, this distance doesn't bounce. So that's why I don't like the new offhand in PvP, because you have to be too close. As far as the bleeds go, unless you were a Necro or a class that had a lot of potency and you class changed to Demon Hunter, unfortunately, most of us just don't have a lot of potency. And you'd have to have a lot of potency in order to make your bleeds and your dots tick. And you would want to run like Eggman's Conflag, Banquet of Eyes, anything that buffs dot damage. Grace would be good as well. And unfortunately, a lot of Demon Hunters, we just don't have the sets, nor do we have the potency. I'm not saying this won't work at lower res games, but at high res games, unless you have 9,000 potency, it just isn't enough to kill a whale. So that's why I don't think the new essences have a place in PvP. And that's going to do it for this video. I hope you all enjoyed watching. I appreciate all the likes, comments, and subscribes that I get. I do go live on Twitch and YouTube. I stream to both at the same time every week, at least once a week, sometimes 2 times a week. So be sure to check out the streams if you like the interaction and want to ask a specific question. If not, you can always leave a comment down below and I'll do my best to answer it. And if you're familiar with my channel, you know we have to end with a little montage showing this build in action. Thanks everyone for liking, commenting, and subscribing. Remember to stay alive, and I'll see you all in the next one. Goodbye.